Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Andy, Electric Geek, and in today's video we're going to be ranking the Daniel Craig James Bond films from 00 shit to 007. And of course I'll be discussing the audio and video quality for each one, so that we can ultimately determine whether or not it's worth your while picking up the 4K editions of the films, and if you have the Blu-rays already, whether or not it's worth upgrading. It's purely just how I personally find the films, obviously, watching them over the years. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. If you have an opinion on it, please stick it down in the comments, and I'll be interested to look at what you have to say or what your own ranking is. And then I'll round out the video with my thoughts on the upcoming No Time to Die. But before we get into all that, of course, I'd just like to remind you that now would be an excellent time to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you do enjoy the video today, please remember to hit that like button. It's a big help to the channel and I really appreciate it. So to kick things off, taking the bottom slot, and probably not to anyone's surprise, is 2008's Quantum of Solace. Quantum of Solace was directed by Mark Forster, who went on to direct World War Z with Brad Pitt, which is probably his most kind of notable one since then. I just think this is the weakest of the four Daniel Craig Bond films, and there's plenty of reasons why. I think, first and foremost, the story is a bit weak. It clocks in, I think it's the shortest Bond film ever, it clocks in at 1 hour and 45 minutes, roughly, and it just doesn't have anything really to kind of distinguish it as a Bond film. It's the most heavily influenced one by the Bourne franchise. I think that's really obvious to see, the way it's been shot, edited. It's very like fast cuts, hand cams, very shaky, quite frustrating, and to watch, quite a frustrating film to watch actually. Not an easy one to watch with all the movement. Edited poorly. The villain is weak. Matthew Almanac is just like forgettable as the villain. I can't even remember his name, and I watched it the other night. Then you've got Olga Kurylenko as the Bond girl. Again, she's just totally wooden. I don't think she's a very good actress at all. There's no chemistry between her and Daniel Craig, and there's just nothing to really keep you interested in it. What I will say is the action is good, and throughout all the films, Daniel Craig is always consistent, and he's the only one that kind of keeps you watching it. Judi Dench and Daniel Craig kind of carry this film, and Judi Dench isn't in it much, so that's saying something. Quantum of Solace is the poorest scoring Daniel Craig Bond film on IMDb with a score of 6.6. In its defence, it is pretty much a direct sequel to Casino Royale, and I think if you watch it straight off the back of Casino Royale, it almost kind of like plays out as a bit of an appendix, an action appendix to Casino Royale, because I think it was kind of criticised Casino a little bit because it didn't have huge amounts of action in it, and I think they've obviously heard the critics there and tried to answer it with Quantum of Solace, and I suppose the action is pretty good, and it's not that long, so it's definitely watchable. It's just the weakest of the four by quite some margin.
You don't have to worry about me.
Audio and video wise, it's also the weakest of the four. It's not that it's a bad picture, but to be honest, I couldn't really see much difference over the original Blu-ray. I mean, it has Dolby Vision, which makes the colours a bit more nuanced. They're definitely a little bit more saturated, and yeah, it's a 2K DI, so it's a slight upscale to the 4K, but would I be shelling out 20 quid, 25 quid to get it if I had the Blu-ray? Definitely not. If you absolutely have to have it, I'd try and pick it up second hand or in a sale or something, or in a 3 for 30 or a 2 for 30. I don't think it's worth 20 quid, 25 quid. But that's just my thoughts on it. I've obviously got it because I'm a Bond fan and I wanted the Steelbook. That's the only reason I have it, otherwise I would just stick with the Blu-ray. So yeah, despite it being one of my favourites for the image on the front of the Steelbook, it's not actually that great a film. Spectre was the second entry from director Sam Mendes, and to be honest, I think he probably should have left it after Skyfall. It gets 6.8 on IMDb, which I think is pretty fair. I think at the time I scored it 8 myself, but that's probably because I was on a bit of a Bond high, having just watched it in the cinema and being a fan. My problems with Spectre is that it was just too long, and it was too formulaic. I felt the previous three had really went out their way to get away from the old tropes of like the 90s, 80s Bond formula, and for the better. And I felt Spectre just cashed in on that, which I was kind of surprised of Sam Mendes to go down that road, but he did. My other issue is that I thought the Bond song was crap. I know it won 2 Oscars for Best Writing and Best Original Song, which Sam Smith scooped, but I just thought it was totally meh and forgettable. Cast wise, again, Danger Craig gives us another brilliant performance. I think he's really relaxed in this one. He's totally settled into it by this point. And you've got Lea Seydoux as the Bond girl and Christoph Waltz as Blofeld, which is an absolute tragedy because he's just totally underused and wasted. When I first found out he'd been cast, I was pretty excited, and it's not his fault, it's just the way they've written him into it. He's just underwhelming and he doesn't get used, which is a shame, especially after his turn in Inglourious Basterds. I thought he would have been fantastic as Blofeld, but hey ho. Lea Seydoux as Madeline Swan, I think, is just flat as well. I don't think it's believable that there's any chemistry between her and Daniel Craig. It just doesn't work for me, which doesn't make any sense because he kind of falls in love with her and that's how the film ends, but I just didn't buy it. There's no chemistry. On the trivia front, it was the first Bond film since Die Another Day in 2002 to utilise the classic Bond gun barrel sequence at the beginning. And also, the whole opening sequence was shot in one take, and it is pretty good, and it was also a precursor for what Sam Mendes would go on to do in 1917. If you haven't seen that, check it out, that's pretty awesome. Audio and video wise, it's the only one of the four to have a 7.1 DTS HD master audio track, and it is a stonker. No complaints, dialogue's clear, all the action scenes are great, loads of low frequency stuff with explosions, all the stuff you'd expect. There's no complaints there, really good score. Video wise, it's only one of two of the four that has a 4K native DI, but it was shot in 35mm, so there is a fine grain structure there. The detail's all there, it looks great, the Dolby Vision does it a turn. It's not demo worthy, but it is a great transfer and it's the best the film looks. Is it a massive upgrade over the Blu-ray? Probably not. Again, I don't really think it's worth rushing out there and upgrading to. It is an upgrade over the Blu-ray, but only marginally. Again, I'd try and pick it up second hand or in a sale. Not a bad Bond film by any means. I think it's got the nicest cover out of the Steelbooks. I think it's the smartest one, but sadly it comes in at number 3 for me. Skyfall was the first film directed by Sam Mendes, and as it turns out he probably only had one in him, but it was an absolute stonker. It gets 7.7 on IMDb, and I would say anything over 7 on that is pretty good. So 7.7 getting closer to 8 means it is a decent film, and everyone seems to think that across the board. It's a great story, you know, an old beat up Bond, a bit jaded at the organisation, coming back when he finds out that agents have been exposed and are being bumped off, assassinated, and he feels the sense of duty and he comes back. Great premise to start the movie on, and it just gets better from there. Won 2 Oscars, one for Best Writing for an Original Song for a Motion Picture, which Adele scooped, and one for Best Sound Editing. Again, it's not really my style, maybe it says more about my musical taste, but our song was alright, but I prefer the rockier ones over the kind of slow, sweeping ballads. The film's great though. I think the opening sequence to Skyfall is my favourite of any Bond film. I think Skyfall manages to capture all the nostalgic elements. There's so many nods to the previous franchise. I think the reintroduction of M, played by Ralph Fiennes, is fantastic. He plays that masterfully, and it's a fitting bow out for Judi Dench's M as well. I think the whole cast is great. Javier Bardem is an excellent villain. Nothing we've ever seen before really, you know, with the bisexual tones and that when his intro sequence. I think Naomi Harris as Moneypenny was another masterstroke. I think the chemistry between her and Daniel Craig is brilliant, it's really palpable. All their scenes together are really good. Just enough innuendo and tongue-in-cheek and a bit of humour there as well, so I really enjoy all their scenes together. Introduction of Ben Whishaw as Q was nice as well. It's just understated enough, you know, we're not harking back to the old daft gadgets and all that. He hands him the tracker and the old Walther, and that's about it. And that's a great scene in that museum between them two. Moving on to audio and video, Skyfall is absolutely demo-worthy. It's a native 4K DI. It looks absolutely fantastic. It was shot digitally, so if you like that digital, clean, crispy look, Skyfall is where you need to go. It just looks great throughout. The Dolby Vision is a bit of an upgrade over the Blu-ray. It just makes all the colours a bit more nuanced, more saturated, and obviously there's much better contrast, and there are quite a few dark scenes in Skyfall, like the casino scene, and obviously the ending at Skyfall Manor. So you will get the best out of those scenes with HDR. So yeah, Skyfall is an absolute cracking Bond film, and I can't blame anyone if they stick it at the top of their rankings. Which leaves us, of course, with only one winner, and the winner is 2006's Casino Royale. Casino Royale is the only Bond film on IMDb which gets a user rating of 8. Even the old Connery ones don't get close to it. I think Skyfall is the next closest perhaps with the 7.7, so that says a lot about this ranking as well. It's directed by Martin Campbell, who also directed Pierce Brosnan's First Century GoldenEye, which is probably his strongest, and I think they brought him back basically because he'd already launched a former Bond's career successfully, so why not get him back again? Pair of safe hands. I think it's Daniel Craig's best. I think having watched Bond films over the year, you tend to find the first one, or maybe the first couple of each actor's run, tends to be their best. It's as though they're obviously nervous about how they're going to be perceived in the role, and it's as if they just give it their all, and the pressure seems to bring out the best in them. I think it was the first time an actor playing Bond had ever been nominated for an award for acting. Daniel Craig was nominated for a BAFTA for Best Actor in a Leading Role. We didn't win it, unfortunately, but it definitely was a sign of the times with regard Bond films, that they were starting to be a bit more serious, and the production value of them was better, the acting quality is better, the direction was better than the old Bond films of old, and they were starting to be recognised for it. Story is great, Casino Royale. Casino Royale is actually the only Ian Fleming original novel that I've read, and the film sticks very closely to it. Obviously the book came out back in the 1950s, so they've modernised it, some elements of it, but ultimately the story at its core is the exact same, and they've stayed very true to it. Action sequences are brilliant. The black and white scene at the beginning is really good and just sets it apart visually straight away from anything that had gone before. It's obviously been influenced by the Jason Bourne franchise, but there's still all the Bond elements there, and it does do its own thing, albeit it's influenced by it, unlike Quantum of Solace. Eva Green is absolutely fantastic as Vespa Lind, and I can't think of any other actress that would have played that character as convincingly as her. You totally buy that Bond would fall for her, and that he would be caught off guard and made vulnerable by her, and Daniel Craig, to be fair, does a great job of getting that across on screen. Mads Mikkelsen is also excellent as Le Chiffre. I think he plays that so well, so understated. It's a kind of less is more approach, which makes him chilling. He's just got a great aesthetic for the role as well, and I don't think he gets enough credit, but he really adds a lot to it as Le Chiffre. And the song, I nearly forgot the song, Chris Cornell's You Know My Name is so fitting of that reboot. Just everything about it, you know, the kind of like no bullshit, this is Bond from the ground up again, let's get rid of all the gadgets and the daft stuff like, God, Pierce Brosnan windsurfing on waves, CGI nightmare from Die Another Day. And I think that just that rockier You Know My Name like theme tune just goes great with that whole reboot, and to this day it's still one of my favourite Bond songs. I've seen Casino Royale about, I don't even know, 20, 30 times since it was actually the first Blu-ray I ever owned, was the Casino Royale Blu-ray back in 2007, and it was demo worthy then. I thought it's a brilliant transfer. So now it's on the 4K. Yeah, it's not a massive upgrade, but it is an upgrade enough. It's not as good a disc as Skyfall Spectre with the 4K DIs, of course not, because it is a 2K DI upscaled to 4K, but it's still a notable upgrade, and I enjoy watching it more than the Blu-ray. I think the Dolby Vision helps it, again, like I've said with the rest, it just makes the colours much more nuanced. The specular highlight is there, and it just makes the image overall pleasing to watch. As for the resolution, all the film grain is still intact, and it's just a little bit more detailed, but again, nothing that you'd maybe rush out and spend money on again. I'd maybe try and pick this one up in a sale also. With that being said, if, like me, Casino Royale is your favourite Bond film, don't hesitate, go out and pick it up for 20 quid, you'll not be disappointed. So there you have it. Casino Royale for me is the best James Bond film that Daniel Craig's done, and the disc isn't too shabby either, so don't hesitate in pulling the trigger if you're thinking about it. I think it's going to be really good. I think if you look at the way I've reviewed them, they go good, bad, so we're due on that logic to get a good one. I think Kerry Fukunaga, the director, he's coming off the back of the success with True Detective, Beast of No Nation. He's a really good director. I know he's come in last minute after Danny Boyle, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think Danny Boyle might have strayed a wee bit too far from the Bond tropes for most people, so I don't think that's a bad thing. But yeah, it's had its troubles, its delays, obviously COVID. It's been a total pain in the arse for everyone, all the Bond fans that want to see it, although it has spawned some really funny memes, the Sid James one being my favourite one. But yeah, I would rather see it than see the memes. But not long to go now, 30th September. It's being released on IMAX. It's the first Bond film to have some sequences shot on IMAX, so that's going to be awesome, and it's probably going to mean that the 4K release will likely run Skyfall very close for the crown of best looking Bond film, but it doesn't have Roger Deakins on the camera, so maybe not. Yeah, so I think No Time to Die, I've got my fingers crossed. I'm feeling positive. I think it's going to be good. I think Daniel Craig knows that he's bowing out. I think he wasn't happy with Spectre. that was just too tacked together. I hope they kind of move away from the whole Spectre, stop trying too hard to tie them all together. I hope they kind of, yeah, move on from it. They've obviously got Madeline Swan in it. Move on from it, but kind of draw a line under it as well and let this last outing be its own thing. I think Rami Malek as the villain is an absolutely brilliant choice. I think he'll be cracking. I just hope they don't underuse him like they did with Christoph Waltz. And it's good that he's back. He's obviously not going to have a lot of scenes, well, I don't think so anyway, but I really hope that he kind of gets the chance to redeem himself from Spectre, although it wasn't really his fault, but just gets the chance to shine again. And then you've got Sophie Waller-Bridge that's been brought in to help with the screenplay and the writing of it, which can only be a good thing. As long as Daniel Craig isn't turning to camera and breaking the fourth wall, I think that'd be a bit too far.
My name's Bond. James Bond. Is it bad that I fancy the Pope?
And then you've got Lashana Lynch taking on the role of the female 007, and from what I've seen of her in the trailer, I think she looks awesome, and I think some of the banter and rivalry between her and the aging Daniel Craig 007 should be good fun to watch. And then you've also got all the old favourites returning. You've got Ralph Fiennes coming back as M, you've got Naomi Harris as Moneypenny, you've even got Jeffrey Wright reprising his role from the earlier ones as Felix Leiter, and Ben Whishaw as Q. So it's definitely a full ensemble and a bit of a farewell for Daniel Craig, I feel, in that regard. So yeah, like I said earlier, my fingers are crossed and I hope it's going to be the bow that Daniel Craig deserves. So yeah, I'm psyched for it. I can't wait to see it, and I'm sure you guys are as well. And on that note, I've left a link for the most recent and final international trailer for No Time to Die, so you can watch that afterwards. So that's about it for today, folks. What I will say just before we go is if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. I'll be doing more 4K Blu-ray reviews, home cinema tech reviews, and PS5 gaming stuff as well. So if you're into all that stuff, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed the James Bond video, and I hope you're pumped to see No Time to Die. If you are, stick it in the comments and let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm Andy, Electric Geek, and I'll see you in the next video.